Good morning. How is everyone today? I mentioned in my message on Sunday service that I was going to put little tidbits of history in during the week. And I want to start considering the events of the past couple of weeks, the Black Lives Matter protests and commentaries that have been taking place. I want to talk to you this morning a little bit about the Reverend Dr. Wilbur Howard. Well, the Reverend Dr. Wilbur Howard was the first black Canadian ordained in 1941, even though he did not get accepted into a pastoral charge until 1963, and he became moderator of the United Church in 1974. Wilbur Howard was born in Toronto in 1912. He was a third and fourth generation Canadian. Howard received education in his childhood and adolescence at Brock Public School and then Bloor Collegiate in the Davenport riding of Toronto, and subsequently completed a Bachelor of Arts degree, and finally ended up in Emmanuel College, a theological college affiliated with the United Church of Canada. In 1941, Howard was ordained by Toronto Conference of the United Church of Canada, and the people of the time across the country prevented him from being placed in the local congregation. A system of settlement, as you may recall the word, in which the transfer committee decides which of the United Church of Canada's conferences across the country to send a newly ordained minister. In fact, the situation was so atrocious that the General Council Office, the national office of the church, had to create a position for Howard so that he could be ordained. In 1941 to 1949, Howard worked for the Boys' Work Board of Toronto, and from 49 to 53 for the Boys' Work Board of Manitoba. Then, in 1954, he became the editor for Sunday School Publications in Toronto. From 1965 to 1970, Reverend Howard was part of the ministry team at Dominion Chalmers United Church. He didn't find a congregation until he was hired to join the pastoral team of Dominion Chalmers United Church in Ottawa in 1963, more than 20 years after he was ordained. Finally, in 1971, Howard received a call to Emmanuel Church in Ottawa as the sole pastor, and he would remain there until his retirement in 1980. During his ministry at Emmanuel United Church, Howard wound up heading to the United Church of Canada in 1947's General Council meeting as a candidate for moderator, the spiritual leader of the United Church, and to the world's surprise, was elected. When his victory was announced at the General Council of the United Church, the members who elected him not only clapped, but they cheered. And Howard's response to such raucous church behavior was to say, "This is a high moment of acceptance." Ann Squire, who was moderator from 1986 to 88, said of the experience, "Everyone knew he meant acceptance was not just as a moderator, but as a black moderator." Howard would later tell the Montreal Gazette about his election. He said, "It gives you a great deal of confidence in the church. You feel the support of people. You feel that, well, people are able to look for someone who may have a contribution, and they match the job with the man they want." He also told the Montreal Gazette, with regard to the United Church of Canada, that it's a great church. "I think a lot of exciting things are happening." And further, he said, "Sometimes we haven't been too good at telling our story, and one of the things I hope to do is to tell the story of the church. I have some gifts in the spoken and written words." And finally, as moderator, some of the stories of Howard's past in the church began to leak out. For example, in the Gazette was the following story. He told of an incident early in his ministry when, on a visit to a Canadian city, he was refused service in a restaurant, and an official of the United Church group he was visiting wrote the United Church headquarters to say that he was not acceptable. Now, he said, I have been accepted. After the election of Howard as moderator, members of the General Council sat in their table groups and talked about what they have done. After a few minutes, Howard, in one of the simple, forceful prayers that had meant so much to their deliberating, sent them back to their congregations with these words: God help us to grab the moment. God help us if we don't. God help us if we do. Let's go. The United Church suffered many difficulties, or some difficulties, after the election, and that was simply because individuals across the country didn't see that as possible happening. I'm encouraged by the United Church, not only because that was the first black moderator, but because the church took the bull by the horns, if you will, and established that individual in that position, whether the people liked it or not. Numbers of people did leave the church. However, over the time, the church has expanded, and we can hear some other stories of our history within the next couple of days. I have included a link here to a hymn that I think is important for us to remember. I trust you'll be able to connect with that and listen to the music. Hugs, and we'll talk again soon.